The morning sunlight glinted off the Potomac River as Washington buzzed with rumors of a secret defense deal that could reshape American naval power. Inside the West Wing, tension simmered. President Donald Trump, known for his unpredictability and obsession with loyalty, had begun to suspect something unusual in the corridors of power. His instincts told him someone close was playing both sides, and soon, he would be right. Across town, Thomas Carney, the newly appointed Defense Secretary, sat in a high-security conference room surrounded by polished mahogany walls and the faint hum of air conditioning. He was reviewing a confidential report marked Eyes Only, NATO Liaison. The pages detailed negotiations between Germany's ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems and the U.S. Department of Defense for the purchase and joint development of advanced diesel-electric submarines, a deal that could undercut Trump's America First naval strategy. Carney's aide, a young intelligence analyst named Laura Bishop, leaned forward nervously. "Sir, if this goes public before the president signs off, it'll look like we're outsourcing national defense." Carney didn't look up. "It's not outsourcing," he said coldly. "It's modernization. The Germans have the tech, and we have the money. The alliance needs this, whether Trump understands it or not." In truth, Carney wasn't driven by strategy alone. Berlin had offered him something Washington hadn't: influence in Europe's emerging defense coalition. He had spent months cultivating relationships with German officials, dining in quiet restaurants in Brussels and exchanging encrypted messages under NATO's communication channels. Each conversation had drawn him closer to what he believed would be his legacy, a transatlantic naval pact beyond Trump's control. But Trump's inner circle was already whispering. National Security Advisor Jack Murray had intercepted fragments of a coded transmission between Berlin and Carney's office. "It's not direct proof," Murray told Trump during a morning briefing, "but it looks like Carney's cutting a side deal. Possibly with Berlin's defense ministry." Trump's face tightened. He slammed his palm on the resolute desk. "Carney thinks he can run foreign policy behind my back. He's finished. You hear me, Jack? Finished." Meanwhile, in Hamburg, German Defense Minister Klaus Neumann smiled as he received an encrypted message from Carney's contact. The Americans were desperate to upgrade their coastal defense fleets, and the Germans were eager to expand influence beyond Europe. Neumann saw the deal as a strategic coup, one that could bind Washington to Berlin's industrial base for decades. By noon, reporters at Politico and Reuters had begun sniffing around. Someone in the Pentagon's procurement division had leaked fragments of the submarine proposal. The headlines were cautious sources, U.S.-German naval talks underway, but enough to draw the attention of the White House press corps. Trump's communications team scrambled to control the narrative, but social media was already exploding with speculation about betrayal inside his cabinet. Carney remained calm on the surface, even as chaos brewed. That evening, he attended a closed-door event at the German embassy in D.C., sipping Riesling and exchanging smiles with diplomats who spoke in hushed tones. One of them leaned in and whispered, "Mr. Secretary, the Chancellor appreciates your discretion. The future of European defense rests on trust, not tweets." Carney's jaw tightened. He hated being reminded of Trump's volatile style, but he needed Germany's confidence. "Tell the Chancellor," he replied smoothly, "that America still has adults in the room." What Carney didn't know was that Laura Bishop had already grown uneasy. She had stumbled across a string of deleted messages on a secure terminal, messages routed through an unregistered NATO proxy server. Something about it felt wrong. That night, she copied the data onto a flash drive, slipped it into her pocket, and walked out of the Pentagon without telling anyone. The following morning, a storm was brewing over Washington, literal and political. Trump had summoned the Joint Chiefs to an emergency meeting. "We've been backstabbed," he barked. "Somebody's trying to sell our military to the Germans." General Raymond Cutter cleared his throat carefully. "Sir, technically, the deal could strengthen NATO interoperability." "I don't care about NATO," Trump cut him off. "I care about America. Find out who's behind this, and I want names before sundown." By the end of the day, security officers had sealed Carney's office, and Bishop's flash drive was sitting in a classified folder labeled Evidence Pending. The file contained everything: emails, encrypted correspondence, and one crucial document titled Phase 2, Transfer of Submarine Design. As the rain hammered down outside the Pentagon, Thomas Carney realized too late that his grand strategy was unraveling. His phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. They know. He looked out the window toward the White House, lights glowing through the storm, and felt the cold grip of inevitability. The deal that was supposed to make him untouchable had just turned into a political torpedo aimed squarely at his career. The next morning, Washington was awake before dawn. A gray mist hovered over the Capitol dome as camera crews set up outside the Pentagon, hungry for answers. Overnight, the Washington Post had dropped a bombshell. Leaked memos suggest secret German submarine deal within Trump cabinet. The story cited multiple defense insiders, and though Carney's name wasn't printed, everyone inside the Beltway already knew who it pointed to. In the Oval Office, Trump paced in circles, phone clutched tightly in his hand. They think I don't know what's going on. I built half this country's deals. I know when someone's lying to me, he shouted, turning toward his aides. Carney's done. I want his clearance revoked before noon. Jack Murray, his national security advisor, nodded but spoke carefully. Sir, if we move too fast, it could look like we're covering something up. Let's verify the documents first. Verify nothing, Trump snapped. I don't need the fake news running my cabinet. Meanwhile, in a quiet cafe in Arlington, Laura Bishop sat in the back corner, her laptop open and the flash drive plugged in. She had copied the files the night before but hadn't looked closely until now. As she read through the messages between Carney and German officials, her stomach tightened. The correspondence wasn't just about submarines, it mentioned Phase 2, involving shared production rights and limited congressional oversight. That meant Carney hadn't just gone around Trump, he had bypassed Congress. She knew what she had was explosive. But going public could destroy her career, maybe even put her under investigation. She hesitated, staring at the blinking cursor on her screen. Then she opened a secure chat and typed a single message. I have proof. Meet me tonight. Across the river, at the Department of Defense, Carney tried to project calm. He appeared on Fox News for a brief statement, calling the leaks politically motivated fabrications. He denied all wrongdoing and insisted that cooperation with Germany was vital to NATO's maritime security. But his voice wavered. Even through the screen, viewers could sense the fear beneath his composure. By afternoon, the story had spread worldwide. German Chancellor Annelies Hartmann held a tense press conference in Berlin, declaring that Germany respects U.S. sovereignty and denies any improper defense arrangements. Her tone was careful, diplomatic, but her eyes betrayed irritation. She knew Carney's ambitions had just placed her government under a global spotlight. Inside the Pentagon, investigators were working overtime. Murray had quietly assigned a team from the NSA to trace the communication trail. Within hours, they found a digital footprint leading back to a NATO proxy server and straight into Carney's encrypted email account. That was the confirmation Trump needed. By 8 p.m., the White House issued a formal suspension notice. Thomas Carney was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. News outlets erupted. Protesters gathered outside the Pentagon gates, waving signs that read "Stop the Deep State" and "America First" means America only. That night, Laura Bishop arrived at a dark parking garage under the Eisenhower building. She met Jack Murray, who stood in the shadows, hands in his coat pockets. "You're the one who found the files?" he asked quietly. She nodded, handing him the flash drive. "Everything's on there. Emails, attachments, even payment transfers. It's bad." Murray glanced at her sharply. "Does anyone else know?" "No one," she said. "And I'd like to keep it that way." He gave a tight nod. "You did the right thing. But this doesn't end here." As she turned to leave, a car engine roared from the far corner of the garage. A black SUV rolled slowly past, its tinted windows reflecting the dim fluorescent lights. Laura froze. Murray's hand instinctively moved inside his coat. But the SUV didn't stop, it drove past and disappeared into the ramp's curve. Still, both of them understood the message: someone was watching. At midnight, Trump tweeted, "Disloyal people always get caught. America deserves loyalty, not lies. Big changes coming tomorrow." In Berlin, Carney's main contact, Defense Minister Newman, read the tweet from his phone and cursed under his breath. "He's going to drag us all down," he muttered. For the first time, Carney realized he was cornered. The White House had turned, the Germans were distancing themselves, and the press was circling like vultures. He poured himself a drink and stared at the folder on his desk marked Phase TWO, confidential. Beneath it, another file caught his eye. Bishop, L. His pulse quickened. "She knows," he whispered. He reached for his phone and dialed a private number. "I need a favor," he said coldly. "The girl's gone too far." Outside, thunder rolled across the Washington skyline. The scandal had begun as a diplomatic gamble, but now, it was becoming a fight for survival. Washington felt different in the days that followed. The city's usual rhythm, traffic, power suits, the hum of ambition was replaced by whispers. The Carney scandal had detonated like a depth charge beneath the capital's political establishment. What began as a leak about submarines had become a question of treason. At the Pentagon, investigators moved swiftly. Files were seized, hard drives cloned, and encrypted servers shut down. A sense of quiet panic spread through the Defense Department. No one wanted to be seen talking to Carney or his aides. Yet, the deeper they dug, the more connections they found to NATO accounts, European contractors, and anonymous offshore payments tied to something called Project Alios. Laura Bishop returned to work under heavy security clearance. She was no longer an analyst in the shadows, she was now the key witness in one of the most dangerous political storms in recent history. Murray instructed her to keep silent, even with her closest friends. But she noticed cars parked outside her apartment at night, the same black SUV from the garage appearing again and again. Someone wanted her frightened, and it was working. Meanwhile, Carney was officially cooperating with the investigation, though his version of cooperation was selective. He denied knowledge of any secret transfer of technology and claimed that the German communications were routine NATO coordination. But his lawyers knew the walls were closing in. Federal investigators had retrieved an email sent from his personal device to Newman's office with the subject line, Phase 2, unofficial approval. That message alone could end his career and send him to prison. In Berlin, Klaus Newman was under pressure of his own. The Bundestag's Defense Committee had called an emergency session. Opposition leaders demanded full transparency. The Chancellor, furious over the exposure, had cut all direct communication with Carney and ordered her diplomats to cooperate with U.S. investigators. The German media was merciless, running headlines like "Washington scandal threatens NATO unity" and "the secret submarine pact that could sink an alliance." Back in D.C., Trump saw an opportunity. At a fiery rally in Michigan, he thundered before a roaring crowd, "We don't need German submarines. We've got the best ships, the best technology, and we're not selling out our country to Europe anymore." The crowd chanted USA, USA, as cameras broadcast the moment worldwide. Trump's team turned the scandal into a symbol of betrayal, fuel for his base, proof that the deep state had tried to undermine him. But behind the scenes, the story was far more complex. Murray's analysts had decrypted additional communications from the NATO proxy network. They revealed references not only to submarines but to an energy infrastructure project connected to European ports, likely a covert expansion of Berlin's defense footprint under the guise of civilian logistics. The implications were huge. If the deal had gone through, Germany would have gained partial control of strategic maritime routes linked to U.S. naval supply chains. Late one night, Laura received a text from an unknown number. "They're going to erase everything. The files won't exist by morning." She froze, staring at the message. Within minutes, she was on the phone with Murray. "Sir, someone's still inside the system. They're wiping the servers." "Stay where you are," Murray ordered. "We'll send a team." But by the time they reached the Pentagon's restricted data lab, it was too late. The entire Alios folder was gone, deleted beyond recovery. Someone with high-level clearance had logged in and executed a manual purge. Only one person had the authority to do that, Thomas Carney. The next morning, Carney vanished. His security team reported he hadn't shown up for his scheduled deposition. His official phone was found discarded in a park near the Potomac, its SIM card removed. The last signal had pinged near a private airstrip in Virginia. Within hours, media outlets were broadcasting breaking news banners: former Defense Secretary missing amid submarine scandal. Conspiracy theories exploded online. Some claimed he'd fled to Europe, others believed he'd been silenced. Murray didn't buy either version. "He's not running," he said quietly to Bishop. "He's repositioning." Bishop frowned. "What do you mean?" "He's got something left to bargain with," Murray replied. "Something bigger than the submarine deal." That evening, a diplomatic cable arrived at the U.S. Embassy in Berlin unsigned, but clearly from Carney. It offered cooperation in exchange for protection. The message hinted at Project Helios being only one component of a broader network of defense industrial collusion spanning multiple countries. Trump was briefed immediately. "He's trying to save himself," Murray told him. "But if he talks, this could implicate allies, maybe even NATO leadership." Trump smirked. "Good. Let him talk. The truth always wins, right?" But even as he said it, he knew the storm had just begun. Somewhere in Europe, Thomas Carney was alive, desperate, and armed with secrets powerful enough to shake the foundations of the Western alliance. Rain poured over Berlin like a grey curtain when the private jet landed at a small airfield outside the city. Thomas Carney stepped out wearing a dark coat and a baseball cap pulled low, a disguise good enough to buy him a few hours of anonymity. He was exhausted, unshaven, and haunted. Every few seconds, he checked his phone even though it had no signal. It was a nervous habit, a reminder of the life he had lost in less than a week. Two men met him at the gate, both carrying diplomatic credentials. One of them, tall and expressionless, introduced himself in perfect English. "Mr. Carney, the minister is expecting you. No cameras, no questions. Follow us." Inside a black Mercedes sedan, they drove through the rain-slick streets toward the German Defense Ministry. Carney gazed out the window, remembering his first meetings here just months earlier. Back then, he was a respected statesman, the man who could bridge Washington and Europe. Now, he was a fugitive, branded a traitor by the president he once served. When he entered the secure conference room, Klaus Neumann was already waiting. The German defense minister stood beside a table scattered with classified dossiers. His expression was calm but wary. "Thomas," he said quietly, "you've caused quite the storm." Carney sat down, his voice hoarse. "You think I wanted this? They leaked everything before I could finish Phase 2. Neumann narrowed his eyes. "Phase 2 was never supposed to exist. You went too far. The Chancellor is furious, and NATO is calling for a full inquiry." Carney leaned forward. "You need me, Klaus. I have everything: emails, contracts, even the bank transfers linking your ministry to the private consortium running Helios. If I go down, you go down with me." The room went silent except for the ticking of a wall clock. Finally, Neumann spoke, his voice cold. "What do you want?" "Protection," Carney said. "A safe house, full immunity under German jurisdiction, and a guarantee that I won't be extradited to the US. Neumann studied him for a moment. "And what do we get in return?" Carney's lips curled into a tired smile. "The truth. Helios isn't just a submarine deal, it's the foundation for Europe's autonomous defense network. If Washington finds out the full scope, NATO fractures overnight. But if we control the narrative, both sides can survive." Neumann hesitated. It was true. Helios had been designed as a multi-layered operation: civilian logistics on the surface, military infrastructure beneath. The plan had been to integrate Europe's naval command without American oversight, a vision that terrified Washington. Carney had been the bridge between those worlds, but now he was a liability. "Give me 24 hours, Neumann finally said. "I'll speak to the Chancellor. But understand this, Thomas, if you become a threat to Germany, we will not hesitate." Carney nodded slowly. "Understood." Back in Washington, the mood was electric. Trump had ordered the State Department to pressure Berlin through back channels, demanding Carney's immediate extradition. "No deals, no protection, nothing," he barked at his advisers. "He belongs to us." But Murray knew Germany wouldn't hand him over easily. "They'll claim jurisdiction because the alleged crimes involve European contractors," he explained to the president. "If we push too hard, we risk a diplomatic crisis." "Crisis? We're already in one. Trump shot back. I want that man in cuffs before the weekend. At the same time, Laura Bishop was growing restless. She felt sidelined as agencies scrambled for damage control. The deeper the government dug, the murkier things became. Intelligence intercepts hinted at something larger, a network of private firms spanning Germany, Norway, and even the United Kingdom, all tied to Alios. It wasn't just a submarine project, it was the architecture for a parallel defense structure, built in secret to bypass US dominance. Late that night, her secure terminal pinged with an incoming encrypted message. The sender's ID was hidden, but the first line froze her in place. Laura, it's me. You're not safe. They've turned the investigation into a hunt. Get out while you can. It was signed simply, TC. Her heart pounded. Carney was alive and reaching out to her directly. She immediately called Murray. Sir, he's in Germany. He just contacted me. Forward everything, Murray said sharply. Don't respond, do you hear me? But it was too late. As she moved to delete the message, another line appeared. They're going to pin it all on me. But you know the truth. Alios wasn't my idea. Then the connection went dead. In Berlin, Newman received a call from the Chancellor herself. Her tone was clipped and furious. Klaus, this man is radioactive. Get rid of him. Quietly. That night, Carney was moved to a safe house in Potsdam under heavy guard. He barely slept, haunted by the realization that he had become expendable. The Germans no longer trusted him. The Americans wanted him destroyed. And someone, somewhere, had decided that he knew too much. At dawn, the safe house lights flickered and then went dark. The guards outside heard nothing but the steady hum of rain. When they finally entered his room, Thomas Carney was gone. A single note lay on the table beside an empty coffee cup. In block letters, it read, Project Alios lives. Berlin woke to chaos. The escape of Thomas Carney had ignited a political firestorm on both sides of the Atlantic. German media speculated that the Americans had orchestrated an extraction, while Washington denied any involvement. In truth, no one knew where he was or what he planned to do next. In a secure basement of the U.S. Embassy, Jack Murray and Laura Bishop stared at a freshly intercepted transmission. It had been routed through 3 European servers, bouncing off military-grade encryptions. The origin, Carney. The content was short but explosive. Alios isn't over. It's everywhere. You can't stop what's already built. Murray's jaw tightened. He's taunting us, he said. Or warning us. Bishop leaned closer. He said Alios wasn't his idea. What if he's right? What if someone higher up used him to start this? For a moment, neither spoke. The question hung in the air like static. Across Europe, intelligence agencies were scrambling. A joint NATO task force traced Carney's last movements to a freight terminal outside Hamburg. Security footage showed him boarding a cargo train headed north, carrying only a small briefcase. But what he was carrying mattered far more than where he was going. Inside that case were digital archives, proof that Project Alios wasn't just a weapons deal. It was an infrastructure map linking undersea communication cables, drone control stations, and energy grids across Europe. The project's true purpose was terrifying: to create a self-sustaining continental defense network, capable of operating even if the US severed NATO command. Carney hadn't invented the idea, he had simply executed it too well. In Washington, Trump's rage had reached its peak. They built a shadow NATO under our noses, he roared during a briefing. Find him, expose every last one of them. If the Germans won't hand him over, we'll make them. Behind closed doors, though, even his generals were cautious. The US couldn't afford a diplomatic rupture with Germany. Alios might have been a betrayal, but it also represented a technological reality Washington couldn't ignore. The world was moving toward decentralization. The old order of alliances was crumbling, and Carney had merely accelerated it. Meanwhile, deep inside a farmhouse near the Danish border, Carney recorded what would be his final message. A small camera blinked red as he spoke, his voice calm but filled with exhaustion. If you're seeing this, it means they've already destroyed the truth. Alios was never about betrayal. It was survival. America's defense industry is decaying, and Europe knows it. They needed independence, and I gave them the blueprint. I never meant to betray my country, I meant to save the alliance before politics killed it. He paused, eyes glinting with resignation. But they'll never let that story be told. Not in Washington. Not in Berlin. He ended the recording, uploaded it to a secure server, and triggered an automated release protocol set to send copies to global media outlets within 72 hours. The next day, his body was found in the woods near Flensburg, an apparent suicide, though few believed it. No weapon was recovered. No fingerprints. Just a trace of encrypted hardware fragments buried in the mud. When the video went public 3 days later, it shattered what remained of official narratives. Carney's confession dominated headlines worldwide. The footage revealed internal memos, funding trails, and contracts signed by major European corporations, proof that Espionage was real and that multiple NATO officials had known about it for years. In Washington, Trump denounced the video as a deep fake and vowed to strengthen U.S. control over Allied defense programs. In Berlin, Chancellor Hartmann addressed the Bundestag with icy calm, saying only, "Europe will stand on its own feet, whether America approves or not." Behind the political theater, Laura Bishop sat alone in her apartment, watching the chaos unfold. She had tried to expose corruption but found herself trapped between two collapsing worlds. Murray called her one last time. "You did good, Laura," he said softly. "But from now on, keep your head down. Espionage may be gone, but the people who built it aren't." She turned off the phone and looked out at the night sky. For the first time, she understood what Carney had meant. Espionage wasn't just a project. It was an idea, a vision of power shifting in silence beneath alliances and headlines. And now that it had been exposed, no one could ever bury it again. Weeks later, a report surfaced quietly in European media. A new consortium, Aegis Systems Europe, had been formed to coordinate maritime infrastructure and digital defense. It was, in every sense, Espionage reborn, rebranded, legitimized, and unstoppable. From his portrait in the halls of the Pentagon, Carney's face stared out blankly, officially disgraced, historically erased. But those who knew whispered another truth. The man who had backstabbed the president had also changed the world order, even in death. And somewhere beneath the Atlantic, a new generation of submarines, built from hybrid German-American designs, began silent tests under NATO command. The deal had backfired, yes. But in the shadows, it had also succeeded.